Welcome in to the second ever Regular Guy Vikings Hour show. Thank you so much for coming back. If you haven't had a chance to go and watch the very first show, I recommend going back and watching it because I said a lot of things in that show that ended up being correct. And in fact, I laid out what I call my fermented 5 picks, and I actually hit my 5-game parlay. And so I won a nice chunk of change off of that. And so I said that I'd have a drink. Sorry, let me pull this back up. I said I'd have a drink. And I didn't steal it necessarily, but my wife has these Mike's Hard Lemonade black cherries, and so I'm going to drink to that, right? So here's to getting all 5 picks right. And yeah, you're going to notice that it's a drink down a little bit already, and that's because, note to anybody who ever thinks of doing this, if you ever at any point unplug your microphone, you need to go back and change your settings, because otherwise you'll end up recording an hour and 5 minutes of just no audio. So I had a ton of energy in that first hour, and so I'm hoping to keep up that same energy the second time around. I had thought of maybe just like going like, oh man, I'll just record tomorrow night, but you know what, like I'm here, everything's set up, I've got all my notes and stuff ready to go, so we're back at it. It is like super late, it's like 1 a.m. on the West Coast, and it's like I'm still going, so I need to get this done so I can get up and do some important family stuff tomorrow, right? So anyway, right off the bat, I just like I talked about, I want you to go back and watch that first episode, please, if you could. But then also, if you like, you know, what I'm doing here, and you're enjoying the videos and getting something out of it, then please give me a thumbs up and give me a subscription as I try and build this channel up. So I will get to what exactly I got right with the picks later on in the show, but for now, we enjoyed a drink and we get to celebrate the winnings, right? So right off the bat, I am going to take us over to it. Before I get into the Vikings-Giants game, right, I'm going to actually take us over to what I call my roster strength spreadsheet. And I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the offenses that I was impressed by, and some of the offenses and defenses that I was impressed by and disappointed in. And so right off the bat, Atlanta, you know, I think we were expecting a lot more out of that offense, right? I mean, they've got a ton of weapons, and Cousins just did not look good. And in fact, I saw some chatter coming out after the fact that maybe his Achilles isn't all the way healed, and so that might help explain that Penix pick just a little bit more if that is indeed the case. But they're going to have to eat a lot of money signing that guy. I mean, I don't think anybody was coming anywhere near the size of contract they offered him. So, hey, that's on you, Falcons, but at least you got a backup plan, right? And then the Bears, in typical Chicago Bears fashion, the defensive and special teams touchdown charmed franchise, if ever I saw one, managed to win yet another game on defensive and special teams touchdowns. So looks like the Bears are back to being the Bears, right? And we'll see if Caleb Williams it improves at all week to week, but for now he didn't look very good. And then offenses I was impressed by, just coming down here, I've got Arizona and I've got Tampa Bay. And Arizona, I'll admit, I don't think people gave them much of a chance against Buffalo, and especially when you're traveling to the East, when you're a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast, I think people have a hard time trusting you. But Arizona really came out strong in that game, and Kyler Murray looked really good. And I think, you know, just based on what we saw last year, I think this is starting to become a trend with Jonathan Gannon teams, or at least in his first couple of years as coach, is that they seem to have great first halves or come out strong and then just fade. So we'll see if that keeps up. But for now, I've got Arizona looking better than I thought they did. And then Tampa Bay, what a resurrection of a career for Baker Mayfield. That was super impressive. They looked really great. And so clearly they are not the 29th best offense in the league. They are very much better than that. And Baker, he's really having a just a complete 180 on his career in Tampa, so good for him. And then over on the defensive side, the two defenses that just didn't impress me, and I think it had a lot to do with the offenses they were facing. But when you talk about, especially with Cleveland being at home in the home opener, to just get rolled the way they did by Dallas, I thought was really interesting. I have them at number 3, and then the Jets. For a team that I think kind of touts itself as being a physical team, they really got manhandled by the 49ers. And so I think for defenses that I had ranked second and third coming in, I got to admit, they left a lot to be desired, right? And then defenses that I found very impressive in their opening week, New England in particular, just completely shutting down Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. I think that was totally unexpected by everybody. And so kudos to them for coming out and starting out their year strong. And I think it might have even been on the road as well. So they're definitely much better than the 25th ranking that I gave them. And, you know, when you're talking about just kind of like historically with Belichick and this new coach, and I forget his name, but coming out of that Belichick coaching tree, I think they always are pretty good on defense. So not necessarily a surprise there, but they look pretty stout. And then the Chargers, you know, I think with Mack and Bosa both being healthy, if they remain healthy, which obviously I don't know if that really ever happens. It seems like one or both of those guys always seem to get dinged up. But if both of those guys stay healthy, I think the Chargers defense is going to prove a lot of people wrong, and especially me, because I had them at 29th. But they played really great. And some of it has to do with Gardner Minshew not being a great quarterback, but not even really a good one. He might be like a bottom 5 guy, but still, the defense came out and really won that game and allowed the offense to kind of get going. And I think that kind of reflects the kind of a team that Jim Harbaugh is trying to build, right? Just a tough, gritty kind of a team that wins, you know, tough games, tough battles. So we talked about that. I kind of wanted to reflect a little bit on what I talked about in my first episode, and that is here, and I'll come back over here. Is power rankings, because I'm not going to pull up the power rankings again. Plus, I think ESPN's updated them anyway. But more or less, I had 5 discrepancies between where I had teams ranked and where ESPN had them ranked. And so the number 1 team I talked about was Houston, who they had ranked at 6. I had them at 16th. And it's not necessarily that I thought Houston wasn't going to be a good team. I just didn't think they were the 6th best team in the NFL. And so, yes, they did get a win, but they had to really eke one out against the Colts, who I think a lot of people thought, you know, I think that just the media and just people in general just thought that Houston should roll Indy and just had a much better team than them. And so in here, I'll pull up my spreadsheet again just to kind of reiterate that. So as you can see here, I had Houston at 16, and they had them at 6, and I think that they played probably somewhere in the middle of that. They probably played at what equated to my eyes to be about the 10th to 12th best team. So they're a little better than I thought, but we'll see how the season continues to go for them. Stroud looked good, so no sophomore slump, at least not yet. The next one that I talked about in terms of discrepancies with power rankings was Cleveland, who they had ranked 12th, and I actually had Cleveland way down here at 24th. And let me pull that so you can see that. And so I have my reasons for that. But I talked about how defensive forward teams just, I don't know, because of the way the league is the way that it has moved to be kind of an offensive league. I just think that even a great defense, unless they're elite, like, you know, like Seattle was somewhat recently, or like the Ravens were back in the day, they can be had with good offensive scheming. And so I just think that Cleveland being ranked 12th felt really, really high, especially with question marks surrounding Deshaun Watson. And so I think I was a little bit justified with that performance against Dallas. And then in addition to that, another defense forward team, the Jets, again, just a team that kind of sees itself as a good, solid team, you know, physical and tough. And with Rodgers at the helm, they can score enough points to win games. And just with that performance against the 49ers, just not impressive. And so I had them as my 22nd ranked team. ESPN had them at 15, and I think they look more like the 22nd best team. Then there were a couple of teams where I thought that they were actually better than what ESPN thought of them. And again, we're going to talk about the Chargers, because ESPN had them, I think, 20th, and I actually have them ranked 13th, or at least had coming into the season. And the Chargers, I just think when you have an elite quarterback like Herbert, and then you have at least historically an elite coach in Jim Harbaugh, he's got to kind of prove himself again. But I think so far so good for the Chargers. They definitely look good. And, yes, it was the Raiders. Yes, it was at home. Minshew and all of that, but I think the Chargers are headed in the right direction, and I think they will end up justifying. I have them making it as a wild card this year. I think they might end up justifying my power ranking, but we'll see how that goes. And then finally, the last team, and maybe this one was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people, but New Orleans. I mean, they come out the gate and they beat the Panthers by 37 points, I believe it was. And I would have to go look at the scores. Let me just pull up ESPN real quick here, and I'll bring it up so you can look at it as well. But we'll go look at the ESPN scores. I believe that score was 47-10, if I'm remembering correctly. And just for a team that people just didn't think much of, the Saints, 47-10. There's a lot of talk surrounding. I'm going to bring my spreadsheet back up, continue to talk about the Saints. Okay, so the Saints, I had them at 14th, and I have them winning the South. And I believe ESPN's ranking was like 25th. And I'm like, boy, they're not that bad. And the way people think about them is they're like, we don't think Carr's very good. We don't think Dennis Allen, the coach, is very good. They're old, things of that nature. And I'm telling you, I think Carr's better than what you think. I think he's more of a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. I think Dennis Allen is a good, solid coach, kind of like building the foundation of a decent team there. And it's a good veteran roster with plenty of players. So I think that New Orleans is going to be a lot better than what people think. And at least so far, even though it was against the Panthers and quite possibly the worst quarterback in the league, Bryce Young, they kind of proved it. Like, to beat a team by 37 points, I mean, that's really saying something. So, all right, so enough about the rest of the league. Let's bring it back to main cam because we are going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Sorry, hold on. Main cam time, please. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings and their Week 1 victory against the New York Giants, 28-6. And what a dominating performance it was. Just so many things to talk about when it comes to the Vikings and how well they played. And so I'm going to come down here and we're going to talk. I made live notes. I made notes during the game, which were a lot of fun because you feel a lot of emotions during the game. And so when I'm writing all these notes down, right, I have a lot of things in like caps and exclamation points, right? And this guy sucks and this guy's a stud. And it was a lot of fun to kind of have that experience again because it's like you go so long without with football that it's like when Week 1 finally hits, I mean, you're just like beside yourself. So I made these notes, and the first thing I wanted to talk about was inactives because I disagreed with some of their choices. So I made predictions on which players would be inactive. Obviously, Brett Rippon was due to be the third emergency quarterback. We all knew that. I did predict that Tristan Jackson would be inactive. That was true. I did predict that Walter Rouse would be inactive. That was true. But then, again, Jalen Redmond I also had inactive, and that one was true. But then to not have Levi in the game, and after kind of rewatching the game back and seeing all of the different defensive line formations they had, with like I remember like on third downs they would have lines like Van Ginkel, Jihad Ward, Jonathan Grenard, and then Dallas Turner or Pat Jones, right? That would be like their third down line. And so I get it, I can see, and I think maybe that was just game plan specific to what the Giants were going to put out there. I really don't see Levi not being on the field against the 49ers, so I think that's going to change. And I hate to just keep harping on this. Brian Asamoah was active and he played special teams. But again, I talked about Brian in my first episode, and I got to tell you, I just don't think that Brian really has a spot on this team. I know he played a ton of special teams, but I didn't really see him make any plays. So I'm hoping, at least for next week and going forward, Levi is active and Brian is inactive. And then I had, so we knew that so from the practice squad, we knew Myles Gaskin was going to get called up to do kickoff returns and maybe just like back up at running back. And then we also knew that Bobby McCain was going to come up. I think maybe that had something to do with him being a former Giant and a veteran. Maybe they just wanted to kind of give him that experience. I think they see him as a special teamer, but you know what? I saw him make at least one mistake on special teams. He almost allowed a guy to get by him and get a block on a Ryan Wright punt, which I think Wright ended up shanking. So I'm not so sure if I would like to see Bobby McCain be active again. We'll see. I had actually when I had heard that Bobby was going to be called up for the game, my guess on the guy who wasn't going to play was Jay Ward. I was dead wrong on that because Jay, as it turned out, I think tied for the most snaps on special teams. So clearly he's one of their main special teams guys, which I did talk about again in my first episode. And so I don't think Jay's going to be inactive at any point this season as long as he's healthy. I think he's a big part of their special team. So I think Jay will be playing every week. But honestly, I a mea culpa for me was that I didn't think that Caleb Evans played special teams, and so I actually had him being inactive. I would actually prefer Dwight McGlothern on the field over Caleb. I think he just brings a little bit extra juice in both special teams and even on the outside, just as being like a really a feisty tackler and player, and he just brings a little bit of extra edge to that defensive back group. And so I just, for me, and they probably will continue to activate a Caleb over Dwight, at least for the time being. But if Dwight continues to perform in practice, I don't think it's too long before Dwight starts to see the field. And then Fabian Moreau, the reason why that one bothered me a little bit was because Byron Murphy Jr. had a really good game, and the ways that he had a good game was when he was in the slot, when he was coming up in against the run, when he was making gritty tackles on the outside. Like, Byron Murphy Jr., that's where he's meant to play, is in the slot on the inside. Please stop putting Byron Murphy on the outside, okay? That's just not what he's meant for. He's a little bit on the smaller side, a little bit on the shorter side. Let Fabian Moreau play and let Byron stay on the inside. That's my opinion. Okay, so that covers inactives. I wanted to talk about, let's bring it back to main cam. I want to talk about deferring. And honestly, on this one occasion, I get it, because I think that Brian Flores and the defense came into this game with a lot of confidence, knowing that they were going to dominate Daniel Jones, which they did. So when KOC won the toss and he deferred, I thought to myself, okay, fine. A deferral in this case does make some sense, even though I have to admit I really hate doing it on the road. But here's my reason why I think that deferring as a I don't know, a statistical thing or whatever. People talk about getting the extra possession. You can sometimes double dip and get the ball at the end of the half and then get it again on the kickoff in the second half. I get all that, but to be honest with you, I just don't think that those numbers, at least I don't think that they are, I don't know, slanted enough in favor of deferring, as when you compare it to the possibility of like completely losing momentum and stumbling out of the gate in a game. I mean, if the opposing team takes the ball right down the field and scores a touchdown, and then you go 3 and out or turn the ball over on your first, I mean, and yes, you could say this either way, but I'm just saying, if you give the other chance if you give the other team the chance to be proactive and kind of take control of the game, I just hate when that happens. I prefer when the Vikings take control of the game right away. And fortunately, they were able to do that after a couple of drives. But I really hate the deferral, I'll be honest. Just some notes about what we're seeing with the kickoffs. So I did see some statistics showing that kickoffs were actually up like 10 or 15% from last year, which is like, of course they would be, because like nobody was returning kickoffs last year. But you would think with the ball coming out to the 30 that teams would be more the kicking team rather be more willing to try and land it in that landing zone inside the 20, try and force teams to bring it out, because I think your chances, you don't really see a lot of kick returners average more than 30 yards of return. So especially when the ball's kind of like bouncing toward them and they kind of like need to catch their bearings and look up, get the ball first, then look up and find the hole. And I just think it'd be a great strategy if teams would try to hit that landing zone a little bit more often and try and force the return team to make a play. Just giving the other team the ball at the 30, which they did, I think, like 2/3 of the time in week 1. I just thought, where's the strategy in that? So that kind of surprised me. I thought we'd see a little bit more in the kickoffs in week 1. So in my very first episode, I just want to point out that I said some things about Dexter Lawrence, in that I said that he had the potential to be a game wrecker. He's their best player. and I just thought you had to get that guy double teamed on in passing situations. You had to not run the ball at him, and I just noticed at the beginning of the game we did exactly that. On the very first play, we ran the ball right at him. He stuffed the run. Then on the second play, we had him in a one-on-one against Ingram. Ingram lost the rep, and Lawrence got a sack right off the bat. Amazingly, the Giants didn't get any more sacks the rest of the game, which that kind of shocked me. And then, of course, because we were kind of reeling in that moment, then we'd throw that dump off to him, and then he fumbles the ball. And so I just, in that moment, I was like, oh my God, are we going to like do this thing where our game plan just is a complete disaster, and we're just going to let Lawrence take over this game? And fortunately, that ended up being proven to be wrong and not the case. But man, that really worried me right off the bat. Now, Dexter Lawrence still had himself a hell of a game, and I mean, he split a couple of double teams at one point. I think it was the guy who hit Darnold's arm on the interception, and so his presence was still felt in that game, but they did at least a good job of minimizing it. And so thank goodness for that, because he is a game wrecker, and he could have completely changed that game. I mean, right off the bat, the Giants had an opportunity to take an early 7-0 lead, which I'll get to that in a minute. I have to laugh at this one because I had actually talked about how I didn't want Daniel Jones to throw up prayer balls and get flags. And as it turned out, we actually had a prayer ball of our own, and it was a really nice, savvy move by Addison to jump back into the defender to draw that flag. And so I just loved that play, and I loved the irony of how like I was going to accuse the Giants of trying to get some prayer balls, and then we ended up getting one ourselves. Will Reichard, this guy, I have been so nervous to watch the kicking game for so long. Greg Joseph, I couldn't even watch him kick extra points, and I would piss and moan whenever they let him try 50-plus yarders, and he would make them occasionally, but I just hated the kicking game, and I had no confidence in it whatsoever. With Will Reichard, I have literally no concerns about the kicking game. That guy is just straight down the middle every time. He's so robotic. And I just want to kind of maybe bring this up now because Will Reichard he's not an actual robot, and he's not Justin Tucker, okay? And even Justin Tucker missed a kick in his first game, right? Because it does happen. Kicks do get missed, and so I just want to warn people now that, like, yes, Will Reichard will at some point miss a kick. Okay, it's going to be okay. The guy has clearly got the mental game. He's going to be just fine. So if he misses a kick, let that one go. You can have confidence in the kicking game, at least just like me, right, going forward. Don't worry about Will. He'll be fine. So I took note of the split at running back between Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. It looks to me like they're going to be giving Aaron Jones 2 drives and Ty Chandler 1. So hopefully that keeps Aaron Jones's snaps down a tad, but still high enough to where he can make a real impact on the game, because in my opinion, he was the best player on the field on Sunday. Let's see. KOC's game management and play calling abilities. So I think that we're moving into the area of Coach KOC being potentially an elite coach. He's really maturing and coming into his own in his third year in the league now. There were some things he did in that game, some play calling and just some little nuance type stuff. I just think he's really feeling comfortable, and I think we're really lucky to have him. I think he's probably already a top 10 coach. He's definitely an elite offensive mind, maybe a top 5 to 10 offensive mind already. I think he's moving into that top 10 as just a head coach in general, a leader of men, a guy who is like the driving force behind the team. And so I just think we're in really good hands with him, and then Flores at defensive coordinator. I think we're looking great. I think we are on the cusp of having an elite coaching staff. Oh, there was just this one little thing, and I forget, one of the two teams tried it. I think it might have been the Giants, but I can't remember. But I love the idea of trying to run QB sneaks on 4th down as kind of like a surprise to the defense, because I think, and again, yes, you might take away the coach's ability to challenge a spot if you think the spot is bad, and maybe the player who has the ball at the end of the play would maybe know where he is, but I love the idea of trying to rush up to the line and snap the ball and do a quick QB sneak to try and just get a free first down, because in that moment the defense is like celebrating their stop on 3rd down, and then suddenly they look up and they see you running to the line. You can either snap the ball and get them on an offsides, or they're kind of like stumbling, trying to just get into their spot and get ready for the play, and they don't really have like they can't gird their loins, you know what I mean, and get ready for the play. And I think that's an opportunity to get free first down. So I think in any situation, I would like to think anyway, a good offensive mind would think if you come up short within a yard on a third down, just immediately rush to the line and run a QB sneak. I would love to see that strategy play out, especially for the Vikings. So maybe KOC will try that at some point this year. We'll see. Loose fumbles, man, what a frustration, right? So we see it again in week 1, and it's like, of course, like we fumble the ball on the opening drive yet again. CJ Ham, even a veteran, you know, like we young guys are doing it, old guys are doing it. It's like we can't seem to get away from this curse. But the thing that's bugging me is just loose balls, because of course CJ loses the ball, and then the Giants linebacker is able to, like, you know, hop on the ball and slide and snag it right before he slides out of bounds. So it's like, it feels like other teams are just so great about just like snatching up those loose balls before, you know, the other team has a chance, or before they hit the sideline. Case in point, that one play where Caleb Evans was the gunner, and Ryan Wright had kind of hit that like screwdriver type kick that had bounced in front of the guy, and then he tried to grab it on the hop and ended up bobbling it. And the ball was loose, and I'm thinking, here we go. Here's an opportunity, and yet again, we can't seem to come up with those loose balls. So I hope it's a law of averages, and I hope that it starts to change at some point, because I'm getting really tired of not being able to come up with those loose balls. I did have notes here to talk about both Kirk Cousins and the Bears a little bit more extensively, but I'm going to do that later in the week, so I'm going to skip that for now. I did see a report come out about Jordan Addison's ankle. So again, they say, just like with the previous one, right? Apparently this is the other ankle. He didn't get a major injury, but he did at least tweak it, right? And he's got some soreness and stuff. So we really need him in the 49ers game. I hope it heals up. So hopefully they're taking care of him, and he'll be ready to go. But we'll see how that plays out. Not having Jordan Addison in that game, and again, we'll talk about him and his connection with Sam a little bit later. We're going to need him in that game, so hopefully he's ready to go. I loved hearing the SKOL chant in MetLife Stadium. You know, one of my favorite things about being a fan of this team is that it's a really big, passionate fan base, and they travel really well. So kudos for those of you who were there doing the SKOL chant in MetLife. Thank you. That was awesome to see. So for us fans watching at home who don't have a chance to go to the games, we love seeing that. Keep it up, right? Garbage time points, man, this was something that used to drive me insane during the Zimmer years, where he would just like play back and just let teams just drive down the field and score these garbage time points. Even though you get the win, it still makes you feel kind of gross at the end of the game. And I just loved how Flores was just staunch and just like wouldn't allow the Giants to get into the end zone. So I mean, just no touchdowns for the Giants. And in fact, we are, as it stands right now after 1 week, number 1 in points against on defense, which is awesome. I mean, Flores, he stuck it out the whole game, refused to give in and let the Giants score touchdowns. And so that's something that's so refreshing and such a change from the Zimmer years that I just really appreciate. Well, I can't read that note, but I did want to talk about Blake Cashman getting 62 snaps as compared to Ivan Pace getting 38 snaps. That frustrates me. I talked about Cashman getting the green dot in the first episode, and I thought, okay, well, he'll be like a 2-downhill, run linebacker. Well, as it turns out, he's playing all 3 downs. And again, I just saw some of that slowness from him. I saw him not really be aggressive in run defense, and he really didn't look great in coverage. And so I really want to see those snaps even out, and to the point to where Pace is out snapping Cashman. We'll see how it goes. I mean, obviously I understand that Pace is more slightly built and more risk of injury. Cashman's a thicker guy, can take more punishment, but still I can't have Cashman on the field for 62 snaps. That's a little bit crazy. So let's go to my game review, pull up my spreadsheet here. Okay, and so I just want to talk about which guys impressed me, which guys did not. But overall, the team just impressed me, period. Okay, I was saying before in my previous videos, I think I even mentioned it in the introduction as well, is that I have an NFL Plus account, and I go back and I watch all of the film. not film. I don't do film study. But what I'm saying, I watch every play, and I watch what happens on the play, and I kind of keep an eye on like who's making a play, who's not making a play, and so then I come up with my own kind of system here where I'm kind of like giving green for what I felt was was a good play, not just like a neutral play, but like an actual play that made a difference. And then, on the opposite side of that, if I give you a red, then that's something where you gave something up on that play. But here's the really big point: is that I track the green blocks versus the red blocks, right? And so on defense, we actually had 26 more green plays than we did red plays, and on offense we had 23 more green plays compared to red plays, and so clearly we dominated the Giants. My two big winners on defense were Andrew Van Ginkel and Ivan Pace Jr. And I've talked about Ivan. He's such a wild man out on the field. I mean, when you think about the fact that he had 38 snaps, I probably saw him make like 8 to 10 phenomenal plays. And so it's like, if this guy is giving you that kind of effort, I mean, he's giving you effort on all the plays, but I just mean like if he's giving you special plays 1 out of 4 times, that's all pro type stuff. Okay. And I think Ivan Pace is starting to make a name for himself, and he could be elite very soon. And then the other guy, just Van Ginkel, I mean, oh my gosh, this guy, obviously that interception return was great. I mean, he read that play perfectly, and it's not easy to catch a ball coming at you that fast. So that was a great play. But another great play that he made that maybe got overlooked was on 3rd down. It was after that Ham fumble when Jones was scrambling and trying to score a touchdown. Van Ginkel just worked right off of a block from, I think, either the center or the guard, and just grabbed him by his feet and just wrangled him at like the 2 or 3 yard line, preventing the touchdown. They ended up kicking a field goal, and that was like their only lead of the game. But that was just such a huge play in the moment, because it's like if the Giants get a touchdown there, I think it just completely changes the momentum of the game and the trajectory of the game. And so I think Van Ginkel, he completely just switched the momentum right there. And so it's those types of little things that a guy like him, I think we're really going to like what we see out of Van Ginkel this year. He really showed me that he's maybe more than just like a rotational rush guy, right? He's more than that. He's a big time player. And then a couple of guys that I thought had really good games: Josh Metellus and Harrison Phillips. Harrison Phillips, I saw he signed that extension, and I actually have a note about the extension here. Just that he signed a 2-year extension, and his average annual value ranks 28th amongst defensive tackles at $9.5 million a year. And I know contracts are a little bit more complicated than that, but I mean, he's, for the amount of productivity we're getting out of him, and for what we're paying him, we're getting a great deal with Harrison Phillips. And I think I'm going to need to see, I feel like I talked about with the actives, I think that they had those specific guys playing because they game planned specifically for the Giants and Daniel Jones. But when we start to play some of these teams like the 49ers, who can run the ball really effectively, I'm going to need Harrison Phillips to play fewer snaps and less snaps at nose tackle and get Taki in there more often. Because Harrison, I've noticed, he's kind of a tall guy. He doesn't really hold weight low, and so I think maybe he struggles to anchor sometimes. He's not like the heaviest guy. I think he's like somewhere around 300 to 305. He can easily get washed out by double teams, even though I know he's talked about liking to be that kind of like dirty player that takes on double teams. But when you're just completely giving up the spot on a double team and he can't really like hold in there, I think we're going to need a heavier guy like Taki to stick in there to help in the run game. Although I will say this about Harrison, he's great about shedding blocks. Even when he's double teamed, he's great at spinning out of it and coming back and making a tackle. But at that point, the running back's already gained 2, 3, 4 yards. And so you want to see a guy who can really push the line backward and get some more TFLs. And then Metellus, he just kind of proved to us what he proved last year, was that he's just a jack of all trades. I mean, he's great in run support. He's great in coverage. He can play all over the field. I mean, he's just such a smart, heady player. And I see a great future for Josh as well. So I'm really glad to see him coming into his own. And then the one player I talked about already before that I thought had the worst game out of all the defenders was Blake Cashman. I think he is a really solid tackler, but I'd like to see him more aggressive in the run game, and I just don't really like him in coverage at all. Okay, so then on the offensive side of the ball, I want to talk about Aaron Jones. Okay, Aaron Jones was the stud of the game. I had him at a plus 11 because every single time he touched the ball, he was special. And I didn't know that this was something that we could have. I didn't know that we could have. I mean, maybe Dalvin Cook in like his first couple of years was this level of elite. This guy's elite. And I'm telling you right now, if Aaron Jones is healthy all year long, this could potentially be, because KOC, he's masterful with the passing game, and I'll talk about that in later episodes about how he's already proven to me that he is an elite, masterful passing game mind. But if we have a running game to complement that, and Aaron Jones stays healthy and gives us this type of elite productivity, I think this could be a top 5 offense. Maybe not in both points and yards, but one or the other, and then top 10 in the other. The other guy I was really impressed with was, Sam Darnold, right? I mean, he had a couple of mistakes, but overall he really took control of the offense. And I think starting in like the second quarter, he really got comfortable and started to just really feel the flow. And so I think that was a really good first step for him. And I think his confidence is growing, and I think we're headed in a good direction with Sam. Really, the only gripe I had about him, other than that one interception, right, where his hand got hit by Lawrence, was just that on that throw to Jefferson on the sideline that got broken up by the safety. I think if Sam, I don't know if it was an accuracy issue or what, but I think if Sam puts that ball to the outside and allows Jefferson to make a play and probably throws it just a tick sooner, I think Jefferson probably makes that catch. So I think he's got to learn to trust Jets and just let him go up and make the plays, right? Okay, so and then the two guys that I had kind of like on the next level were Christian Darrisaw and Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison, so that one drive in particular where Sam was kind of coming into his own, he hit Jordan Addison on 2 sideline timing patterns, and it just looked so effortless. And I mean, that's part of Addison's game, right? It's just the precise route running, the great footwork. He toe taps on the sideline. If Sam already has that kind of timing with Jordan, I think we're in for some really special things with this offense. And so let's just fingers crossed that Jordan's healthy and can play this week, because those two were really looking at, I think Jordan got injured in the third quarter, so those guys were working on a hell of a connection there. And then Christian Darrisaw, he unjustly, I think, got credited with both a penalty and a pressure at one point in this game. But honestly, he was one-on-one with like Burns and Thibodeau all day long, and he was just taking them out of the game. I mean, he barely heard those guys' names, except for that one time that Thibodeau face masked him, right, and bailed us out of a 3rd and 16. That was awesome. Way to go. What is he in his 3rd year now? So I don't know if he's really playing up to his draft slot to this point, right? But the area where Christian Darrisaw really impressed me the most was I think he's really gotten a lot better as a run blocker. He was just nasty out there throwing guys around. It was so much fun to watch. So I'm so glad we extended him, because he is an elite left tackle. He might be making his first All-Pro this year. We'll see. And then the one guy who had a down game for me, and there weren't a ton of guys who had down games because, again, we dominated the Giants. Garrett Bradbury, he had a couple of reps, right, where, again, we're talking about Dexter Lawrence here, and I feel like there's a narrative out there coming out of week 1 that Ingram and Bradbury got completely annihilated, and that's just not the case. They were both solid. Bradbury did have a couple of bad reps. He had a penalty at one point that I think it was when he was out on the second level for a run play and got called for a hook, or a hold, and I felt like he let go soon enough. I kind of felt like that penalty was BS, but yeah, I digress. And then, he did have a bad rep against Lawrence where he got completely pushed back into Darnold. But overall, Sam was pretty clean. I mean, he had what you would call NFL pockets throughout the game. So I thought that Ingram and Bradbury were solid. So I think it's not much ado about nothing, but I think it's overhyped how bad they were. And I think maybe PFF grades have a lot to do with that. But again, I have my own questions on some of their grading systems. I know they do the best they can. Again, I love PFF. They have quantified football, or at least attempted to, and I think that's great, because it makes the game so much more interesting for people who kind of like that kind of thing, like people like me, that like data and information and stuff like that. So there is my thoughts on just what I was seeing when I went back and rewatched the game. I did make some other notes here just that, and we're coming up on 40 minutes, and we're going to get to the picks later in the game, so I can kind of do my victory lap on how good of a first week I had. But there was I did talk about the rotation on the defensive line. They had some really interesting four-man lines, like they switched out of a 3-4 and went more to like a 4-3 or maybe even a 4-2 with an extra defensive back. You know, Jihad Ward in particular, when he first signed with the team, I thought to myself, when I went back and looked at his snaps with the Giants used him exclusively on the outside, and I thought that was a waste, because when I was looking at this guy's size, and in the preseason, then I saw the quickness, and I go, oh, this guy can play on the inside too. He can be versatile, and so I think that played a big part in him making the team. And then lo and behold, in week one, you see him playing in the middle, I think playing on the nose actually, and just, I mean, putting the center of the Giants, whatever his name is, on the spin cycle 2 or 3 different times. Jihad Ward just spun right past him, and he used that spoon move like almost exclusively throughout the game, but man, it worked like a handful of times. So I love seeing Jihad on the inside, and I hope they keep using that, because he looked damn good. Let's see what else. So did we talk about the prayer ball already? Yeah, we did. I felt like Murphy played too much on the outside. I don't want to see that. I want to see guys like McLeather and Moreau get their chance to back up and play on the outside. I really don't see why, when you have a couple of guys like that who can come in and play, why when Shaq or Stefan need a rest, that you would then just put Byron on the outside. Byron needs to stay on the inside. That's where he's best. Chip blocks. This was a really interesting one to me, because I saw it happen a couple of times in the preseason. Then I saw it happen again a couple of times in week one, where I think when it comes to the kind of tackles that we have in O'Neal and Darisaw, these are guys who hold up one-on-one for the most part. Darisaw more than O'Neal. I don't think they need chip blocks, and the reason why is because, and I mean, you know, the at least talent-wise, the two guys that they were defending on Sunday, Burns and Thibodeau, I mean, those are talented guys, talented edge rushers. I saw one particular occasion, and it was the play where Darisaw got credited with either a hurry or a pressure or whatever, was that he had the defensive end lined up, and then Ham came over and chipped the guy and basically just like pushed him to the inside, and he was able to like stunt around the guard and get in there. And Darisaw lost him because of the chip. And as I'm watching this, I'm going, you know what? I think maybe we should get rid of the chips on the tackles and just leave tight ends in to run block, and just leave Ham in there to be like a lead blocker. But let's let the tackles just handle their one-on-ones. That's my opinion on that. Darnold settling down in the second quarter. He looked amazing. I thought Ed Ingram had some really encouraging snaps against Dexter Lawrence in one-on-ones, which I actually advocated against in my first video. I said, don't let that happen. Well, they did let it happen, and Ingram actually kind of impressed me on a couple of occasions. He was actually able to hold his own and keep Dexter from making an impact on the play, and I thought, okay, that's progress, especially in a pass blocking rep, because that's kind of unusual. He can get beat. We've seen him get beat very easily against elite defensive tackles, so that gave me some hope for him. We talked about Riker just being awesome. Right, and that sidewinder punt, I was like, okay, if this is a strategy, I love it, because the way that I think that punt might have traveled like 40-45 yards in the air, but the way that it kind of like almost like a screwball from a pitcher just kind of like sailed away from the punt returner and caused him to kind of bobble the ball and create kind of an opportunity for a play on special teams. If that's a part of Wright's repertoire, I hope he keeps trying that, because I think that might actually work out, and it's something new and interesting that I don't really see punters do a lot anymore. A lot of guys go for like hang time and distance and stuff. Again, my mea culpa on Caleb Evans playing on special teams. I never thought I'd see that happen. I didn't think he was a special teams guy. Thanks for the face mask, Thibodeau, on that 3rd and 16, man. Really bailed us out. I think we might have ended up scoring on that drive too. So there was one particular time in the game where Lawrence was out, I think, for maybe the entire drive, or at least a few snaps of the drive, and I think that KOC might have noticed that he was out of the game, because on the very first 2 plays of the drive, he called inside runs to Aaron Jones, and I think Aaron Jones broke off 2 nice long runs for like a total of like 30 to 35 yards. And so if these are the kinds of things we're going to be getting from KOC, we're in really good hands at head coach. So I hope to see more of that. The Giants, their offense in particular was horrible. Their receivers, it didn't even matter who it was. receivers, tight ends, running backs. Everybody was dropping balls, and Jones was obviously inaccurate because he's a terrible passer. But in particular, I think that Daniel Jones could very well be, if you take out the rookies, and maybe even Bryce Young, and he might even be worse than some of those guys too, but he looked like a rookie to me. He did not look like a guy who's been in the league for 5 or 6 years. It was kind of pathetic because I saw on numerous occasions, it was at least a handful, if not more, where all he had to do was just drop back and just either send the ball out to the flat or hit the running back coming out of the backfield or hit receiver on one of those like quick little routes where they turn around like after like 5 yards. Like he had several of those opportunities where all he had to do was just hit his back foot, let go of the ball, and just take the 5 yards and get into like a second manageable or third manageable or convert a third down. And he just wouldn't take the opportunities. I mean, he was clearly rattled, didn't trust what he was seeing. And I'm just like, for a veteran guy, those are the kinds of plays you expect from a veteran guy. So I didn't like Jones coming into the game, but after watching back the game and just seeing all of the missed opportunities, even if they were like short gains, I mean, he was dinking and dunking already, but it's like some guys can get away with that. You can at least keep your team in the game if you're just like taking the yards the defense is giving you. And he didn't. And I think some of it had to do with the fact, I mean, in addition to the fact that our pass rush was just like all over him throughout the game, but guys are also doing a great job, and this could be a Flores thing, I don't know, of just getting their hands up in the passing lanes and just flashing their hands in front of Jones's face and kind of just making him like, oh, and then I think maybe it's a good strategy against quarterbacks that like to run, right? Because it's like as soon as they see that flash of color, they immediately like try to use their legs. And so I think they were really ready for that. I think they strategized and game planned for Jones really, really well in this game and just made him look awful. So I don't know if he's going to look that bad going forward. Maybe, probably, I don't know. If I were Brian Daboll, I would not let this guy torpedo my career as a coach. I'd go out and probably sign a guy like Ryan Tannehill, get somebody competent in there, and see if you can win a few ball games. Because this guy, he's going to get Daboll fired. He's bad. Okay, so where are we at? We're at 45 minutes. That's awesome. Okay, so I made a note of something, and that was I'm calling these go look plays, and I listed out 5 of them. Okay, these were plays that really stood out to me when I was watching the game that I thought, that's worth, and they're not all positive. I think I had some negative, but they're plays where I say, you know what? I think people should go back and watch these to kind of like get a little bit more context of what was happening in the game. So if you have NFL Plus, or if you have the ability to go back and rewatch the game, like maybe someone posts like the full game on YouTube or something, who knows. But if you have a chance to go back and look, here are 5 occasions I think you should go back and watch, or 5 plays rather. So with 6:52 to go in the first quarter, I think that Darnold either called the wrong play or ran the wrong play, because on the play, Aaron Jones was lined up to the far left, almost near the sideline, and it was clearly being set up as like a wide receiver screen type play, except with Aaron Jones. And the reason why I know this to be true is because Darrisaw released off the line right after the ball was snapped, and he was like 3 or 4 yards past the line of scrimmage at one point, and if Darnold had tried to throw the ball, I think Darnold ended up scrambling for like 3 or 4 yards. It was like a 2nd and 20 or something like that. If he had thrown the ball, Darrisaw would have been called for a illegal man downfield. That was clearly supposed to be a wide receiver screen to the left. And if you go back and pause that, when Darnold looks to his right and starts to try and scramble, there was like nobody over there. I think if he throws that ball to Jones with Darrisaw coming out to block, I think Jones might score a touchdown on that, honestly. It was wide open. So that was in the early going of the game. That was before he started to feel more comfortable. And so I think something happened there. He called the wrong play, or he just misread the situation or something. But if they clean that up, that might be a big play going forward. So watch out for that one. Okay, the next one I want to talk about. With 3:10 to go in the first quarter, this is on defense. I just want you to watch Ivan Pace Jr. and his effort versus the effort that Blake Cashman gives. You will see a stark contrast between what a guy who plays like a wild man looks like and what a guy who, I wouldn't call it disinterested, but boy, it just seemed like he just didn't really want to stick his nose in there and make a play. And Pace, for me, man, that guy, I got high hopes. I think Pace is going to be just a baller, all pro, perhaps. I mean, if he gets more snaps and plays more often and continues to make these highlight style plays, We're looking at an all-pro quality linebacker here. Okay, third play, with 13:38 to go in the second quarter. Ty Chandler, and this is a gripe that I have about Ty, is that he does not follow his blocking. He probably, at least on 50% of his carries, he does not follow his blocking, and he tries to break runs to the outside. And he did it, I know, at least on one occasion in the red zone, where he was supposed to go up the middle, and he might have even had a touchdown, and instead tried to break it to the left and ended up taking a TFL. But on this particular play, this is, I think, what it's all about, right? And it's why I think Aaron Jones is so elite, because he understands situations. He knows when to follow the blocking and when to break it outside. Like on his touchdown run, he was supposed to run in the middle. He knew to take that outside. He got the touchdown. Okay, that's the savvy of an elite veteran running back like Jones. Ty Chandler, at some point, he's got to learn this, because on this occasion, it was a design. It was actually when we got pinned down at the 1 yard line. I think it might have been the very first play. It was a design run just like up the middle, and I think he ended up gaining like a yard or two. And if you go back and you pause it when he's handed the ball, CJ Ham sees it because he immediately goes out to the left to go engage with the linebacker. If Ty had seen that and had stuck his foot in the ground and had juked to the left, he had a ton of open green. I mean, he could have probably broken off a huge 30, 40, 50 yard run if he had just taken that run to the left. So anyway, it's learning. I'm sure he'll see it when they study the film. But man, there were some missed opportunities for Ty. And at the same time, I thought he had a decent game. I mean, where did I have Ty? I had him at a +2. So I mean, ultimately I had Ty having a good game. But anyway, my fourth play, with 14:34 to go in the third, I think it was a designed screen. In fact, I think it was the play that Addison hurt his ankle on. It was like a wide receiver screen or something like that. Bradbury actually throws Dexter Lawrence to the ground, and it almost looked like he did it with one arm. And I got to tell you, if you ever, because we're so used to Bradbury being ragdolled, if you ever want to watch Bradbury ragdoll somebody, and somebody like Dexter Lawrence, somebody who's an elite, well-known defensive tackle, go watch that play again. That was 14:34 to go in the third quarter. And it was kind of like at the tail end of the play, but Bradbury just throws him to the ground. It was pretty awesome to see, so I wanted to point that one out. And then finally, with 4:22 to go in the third quarter, this was on defense again. Watch the brilliance in the coverage between Josh Metellus and Ivan Pace, because what happens is, on this particular play call, and I don't know, I think that Flores game planned perfectly. Man, it was like he knew everything Dayball and Jones were trying to do. Jones immediately looks out to the left, and Metellus had been showing rush, and I think he backed off. He backed off into literally the exact zone that Jones was looking, because I think he wanted to throw a slant. So then Pace at the same time had also threatened rush, and I think had backed off. So then Jones's second read on the play was to then go to like his check down or whoever the next guy in the progression was, and literally Ivan Pace was standing right in front of the guy. And so I just thought it was so awesome to watch those two guys kind of like tag team that coverage and just completely. And I think it was just the story of the day with Jones, where it was like he never trusted what he was seeing. Every time he looked at something, he felt like he was being rushed, or there was like a guy in the way, or something was flashing in front of his face. And so just those 5 plays in particular really stood out for me, just worthy of going back and watching and being like, wow, that was interesting, or that was fun, or, oh, that could have been better, So anyway, so now we're at 52 minutes, which gives me just enough time to go over to my picks here. And we're going to talk about how we did last week. So let me just pull this up. Or just to pull it down so you can see it better. Okay. And because I'm getting this show out before the Thursday game, I wanted to make sure that I got my pick in for the Thursday game, because I'm not going to be recording again until somewhere between Thursday and Sunday. Maybe Friday or Saturday. I don't know which yet. So we have Buffalo at Miami as the Thursday nighter. I checked all my spreads on ESPN.com, and Miami is favored by 2.5 at home. And so my own personal spread is actually Miami by 2, which means I have Miami winning the game, but I actually have Buffalo covering the points. So that means basically I think Buffalo will lose this game by 1 or 2 points. So we'll see how it plays out. So anyway, just doing my victory laps now. And actually, before I get to it, because it's only going to take me just a couple of minutes to do that, I did kind of want to show you. Hold on. Let me. I don't know how well you can see it. Anyway, these over here are my power rankings to start the year. Okay, these are my current power rankings now. I updated them for week 2, and I've got some movement. Okay, my top 5 actually remain the same. I had Dallas with their impressive win, moving up 1 slot. I had the Rams moving up a slot, even though they lost to the Lions. But when you consider the fact that I have the Lions as the 3rd best team in the league, the way that they played, I think the game was in Detroit. The way that they played, I thought was impressive. So that was enough for me to move them up a spot. Miami, I had moving up 2 spots. They looked a little bit dead in the water against the Jags there for a minute, but they pulled it out. And so that was... It's more about Cincinnati dropping, I think, than it is about Miami moving up. And, of course, they also jumped over Jacksonville because they beat Jacksonville. Cincinnati, I had dropping 3 slots because they looked terrible against the Patriots. I don't know how you allow that to happen, but oh well. They've got some turmoil happening over there in Cincinnati, so maybe they're turning back into the same old Bengals. Who knows? I already had the Saints high, and now I've got them jumping up even higher with that very impressive win against the Panthers. I've got them all the way up to 10, jumping up 4 spots from 14. I've got Jacksonville sliding 2. Buffalo slides 1, if only because I didn't love how they played Arizona. Maybe Arizona's better than we think they are, but honestly, I felt like Buffalo could have had a little bit better showing. They still pulled out the win, but they dropped a slot. Green Bay, I dropped a slot. I didn't think that I think losing to Philadelphia, there's nothing bad about that. Like, Philadelphia is a good team, and the game was in Brazil. It was kind of a weird thing, but the reason why I dropped him at least 1 slot for now is because of the Love injury. So he'll be out at least 3 weeks, if not longer. So we'll find out. But so for now, Green Bay slides just a tad. The Chargers actually slid 1 spot just simply because of other teams moving up, and that they didn't quite pull away from the Raiders earlier. So they slid 1 spot. I've got Tampa moving up 2. They looked impressive against the Commanders. I had Chicago sliding 2 because the offense looked horrible. They were bailed out by the special teams and defense again, so you can't rely on that week after week. So for now, I got them sliding 2 spots. Got Seattle moving up 1 with a nice little win against Denver. Indianapolis, I got moving up 1. I liked the way that they showed, or like what they showed against Houston. Atlanta, I've got sliding 2 spots. They looked nothing like what people thought they were going to. Our Minnesota Vikings, I've got raising up 3 spots. So one thing I try not to do with my own personal power rankings is I try not to overreact week to week. I won't let a team go up or down more than 4. In fact, I only allow it once, and so I did that. I let the Saints go up 4, and then I had, I had New England going up 4 as well. So anyway, no more than 2. Anyway, I'm trying to like parse out all these rules, right? So anyway, I got the Vikings jumping from 25 to 22. So hopefully that continues. We'll see. The Jets, I got sliding 2 spots. I didn't like how they got pushed around and lack of physicality against the 49ers. Cleveland, I've got dropping 1. It probably would have been more, but the bottom, there's just so many terrible teams. I really only had them dropping just the 1 spot. Arizona, I had moving up, at least, showing up to play against Buffalo. New England, I had popping up all the way from 31 to 27, 4 spots. So they're on the rise. We'll see if they keep that up. Denver, I had sliding 2 spots. I thought maybe... I just think it was because I just thought, if you go back and look at Bo Nix's yards per attempt, I mean, the guy, they're not going to win games with him just dinking and dunking and trying to use his legs. I don't really see it. So, yeah. So, anyway, Tennessee, I had dropping a slot. They had a chance against Chicago, but kind of squandered it. Levis doesn't look good. Washington, I had sliding a spot. And in fact, here, if you can't see that, you can't see some of these teams I'm talking about. Washington slid a spot. They got kind of blown out by Tampa. The Giants obviously looked awful against us. I got them sliding a spot, but not all the way to the bottom because nobody looked worse than Carolina, so they hung tight at 32 overall. So here we go. All right, we're at 58 minutes. We're going to wrap it up with a couple of minutes just going over my picks, which was I went here. Let me pull it back to the main cam here, guys. We're going to wrap up the show now. I was 13-3 straight up, okay? The 3 picks that I got wrong were I had Cincinnati beating New England. I think most people did. So that one I think probably got most people. I actually had the Colts beating Houston. I think it would have been easy to pick Houston, but I actually kind of thought the Colts could win, and they actually played it close. So I was, hey, that almost worked out, but Houston was able to pull it out. And then, like I have mentioned before, I trusted my numbers. I went ahead and just picked the Giants because that's what numbers were telling me on the pick segment. But when I talked about the game breakdown and my prediction, I had the Vikings beating them like 24-10. And that basically played out the way I thought. So I got that pick wrong, but honestly, at least in my heart, I was 14-2. But 13-3 is the official record. Then against the spread, I actually went 10-6, and of course, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I did my fermented five, and I got all five right. I did a 5-team parlay on Bovada. I threw down $20 and I won $490. So the payout was $470. You get your 20 back. So a hell of a week picking games for me. And so if there's any one reason for you to come back and watch my shows, do it for this, because I might be onto something here, right? So anyway, so let me get kind of ready to end the show. We're literally coming up on exactly an hour, and I thank you guys so much for sticking with me here and hanging around to the end. So again, please, if you like what I'm doing here, if you like the content, please give me a thumbs up. Please give me a subscription. I'm trying to build a channel. I'm hoping that the Regular Guy Vikings Hour becomes a mainstay. So I would love to keep doing this. And so my motto for this channel and for the season is this. And just like we did in week 1, right? Play vicious, be victorious. Peace.